Hi everyone, it's Mike, and we're back for the Game of Thrones Season 6, Episode 10 finale review. And boy, what a finale it was. I've picked my job off the floor, and let's just go ahead and jump right into it. We begin the episode in King's Landing, where we see all of the characters participating in the Trials by the Seven, preparing to get ready for this most anticipated event. I'm not sure about you, but I found Cersei's attire to be very peculiar, almost like she was suiting up to be an X-Men or something. Well, something definitely seemed off about that, and I, like many others, anticipated her in what I call the Big Bang Theory, but I was completely caught off guard by the later events in the episode. We then have Sir Loras come out with a new stylish haircut looking very similar to Lancel. It makes you wonder if Lancel was manipulated in the same Stockholm Syndrome tactic that Loras was. He confesses, renounces his Tyrell name and all rights that go with it, and then proceeds to get a gnarly prison tat on his forehead. Meanwhile, Maester Pycelle is tricked by one of Qyburn's little birds into going down into Frankenstein's lab, where he sees Qyburn and realizes that his days are pretty much numbered. The little birds proceed to stab the shit out of him, and that leads me to believe that that poor prostitute will not get paid after all. Back at the Sept, the High Sparrow begins to wonder where the heck the Queen Regent is, so he sends Lancel down to locate her, and Lancel notices a child fleeing down the steps of the Sept. Lancel goes in hot pursuit and is led down into what appears to be a cellar beneath the Sept. I completely love the irony in this scene with the little bird taking down the sparrow with a knife to the kidney. Around this time, Marjorie's wheels start turning and begins to realize something is amiss with Cersei's absence. She has a very direct exchange with the High Sparrow and basically tells him everybody needs to GTFO, get the F out. So Lancel's discovered the huge cache of wildfire, and like a scene out of the movie Django Unchained or The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly with the cigar fuse, Lancel sees melting candles burning slowly into a wildfire pool that he struggles in futility to get to, and then boom. Sept nuked, jaws dropped all over Planetos and the HBO medium. Rest in peace, Sparrows. Rest in peace, Tyrells. Rest in peace, Kevin Lannister, and everyone else who fell in this holy place of worship. Next, we get a glimpse of Cersei sipping some wine, looking on while the Sept collapse, which put an image in my head of Nero playing the fiddle as Rome burned. Even though most historians agree this didn't actually happen, it still has that eerie feeling of it, with someone gazing upon massive destruction of their own domain and people with great satisfaction. Just really disturbing. Cut scene to poor little Tommen, who is in a clear state of shock. Remember, he was going to be there, but the mountain blocked him at the door. Tommen then very pragmatically puts his crown down and walks over to the ledge and just swan dives out of the Red Keep. I had to rewind that again to take another look because it happened so fast. Rest in peace, Tommen, and all Lannister slash Baratheon children. The Valonqar prophecy foretold by Maggie the Frog is almost complete. And if you want to take a look as to what that is, I explain it in the video in the link to the top right. So just click on that. Moving up north to the Twins, we see Bronn and Jaime celebrating the retaking of Riverrun. Jaime has some pithy dialogue that's actually pretty humorous with Walter Frey, basically telling him what a pussy he is and to quit talking so much smack because he's basically done nothing. Then we notice the serving girl looking over at Jaime and Bronn, and Bronn has a sarcastic remark, as usual, basically just saying Jaime has a much easier time with women. But this girl looks very suspicious to me, and immediately my hopes are up, and just completely teased to a new high for this episode. So we'll get to that part in a second. Then we get an image of Cersei standing over Tommen's body, and you could just completely tell that she has lost all remaining humanity, and any type of shred that she had left vanished whenever Tommen threw himself off the ledge. I mean, Tommen was basically the only thing that kept her human at that point, and that's just completely gonzo now. So good luck if you're in her way at this point in time. Sam eventually arrives in Old Town with Gilly and baby Sam, who has not aged one bit over the course of 2 seasons. And he has a kind of an awkward exchange with the jerk maester that's working the front desk. And finally, he gets access to the library, and the look on his face is like one you'd expect to see on Tyrion. Maybe not new Tyrion, but old Tyrion walking into the largest brothel in Westeros. So we know Sam was sent there to learn how to combat the Great Other and the whole impending threat of the White Walkers, and also to become the Maester of the Night's Watch. What I'm hoping to see is we get some Marwyn the Mage action. And I won't get too spoilery because I think that a lot of this plot line is going to be revealed within the next season. All of the events that occur in A Feast for Crows at the Citadel. But basically, Marwyn the Mage is in possession of a glass candle that starts glowing. That's kind of a big deal. So the glass candles are like the Palantir, the seeing stones that Saruman had in the Lord of the Rings that he used to contact Sauron with, the big black crystal balls. So it's very similar to what's in the books, and Quaithe uses this to contact Daenerys by using the glass candles in a very similar fashion. So it's very interesting, and these candles have like been pretty much inoperative until the dragons were reborn. And if you think back to the warlocks of Karth and what they said about how their powers suddenly intensified with the dragons, it makes a lot of sense. So really interested to see what transpires at the Citadel next season. So, traveling back up north, we see a white raven en route to Winterfell. Now, we saw a scene earlier with a bunch of white ravens being dispersed. These are sent out by the maesters of the Citadel specifically to notify the kingdoms of the changes in seasons. In this case, obviously, the season has changed to winter. So we see John talking to Melisandre, and angry, super pissed off Davos shows up, tosses the wooden stag he carved for Shireen right at Melisandre. She pulls it out of the air like she's Odell Beckham Jr., and then she confesses to burning Shireen and totally looks remorseful in doing so. And you've noticed over the course of the events in season 6 that she does show regret. She realizes that she misinterpreted the signs of R'hllor, not to justify it, but it does show that she has some humanity within her. Um, and then she goes on and justifies it by saying that, hey, her mother and father were involved in this too. Maybe the Lord willed it. And then there was the whole discussion about, like, is it an evil God or whatever? But ultimately, she just misinterpreted the signs. So Davos is super pissed off. He looks at Shireen like his own daughter, and he asks Jon Snow for permission to execute her. So John's faced with a very difficult decision at that point. And I think because, she resurrected him and she may play a vital role in the War for the Dawn, John knows like he needs everybody he can get to fight the Great Other. He just says, get lost. If you ever come back here, I'm going to hang you. And I knew she wasn't going to be executed simply because of an exchange that she had with Arya.
We will meet again.
And what makes this super interesting now is that they have intersecting paths. Arya is headed north en route from the twins, and Melisandre is headed south. So it looks like this one may come to fruition. And here come the tinfoil theorists. What if Arya stabs Melisandre for buying Gendry, and she knows that Melisandre was going to sacrifice him, and then when she stabs her, Needle turns into Lightbringer? Totally could happen, bro. I mean, I don't think that's going to happen at all. But I am definitely interested to see what happens whenever they do cross paths. Dorne. Well, don't worry, we won't be staying here long. And it's actually a good scene, very short and brief, where Lady Olenna puts the young whippersnappers, aka the Sand Snakes, into place. Then is promised her heart's desire by Illyria Sand, to which Lady Olenna, of course, gives her some cynical response and look. Then Varys appears and drops the line that gave me chills. He just walks out and says, "Fire and blood." And I immediately was like, holy shit, Varys, you are the man. And House Targaryen is back for sure. Now we head over to Essos and Marine. Dany is in the process of telling Dario he's going to stay behind and pretty much crushing his soul. Dario says, I love you, and it just falls on deaf ears. I mean, Daenerys Stormborn is just a cold hearted Dragon Queen heartbreaker. So, Dario will stay behind and run the show as she goes off to wreck shop in Westeros. Dany then goes over to her most trusted advisor, Tyrion, and they talk about the hard decisions to come and that it's a scary game to play and that she should be scared and it's a good thing that she's scared. And then I'm not sure if anybody else saw this, but it kind of looks like Tyrion has a little crush on Daenerys, and I mean I totally don't blame the guy. I mean anybody in their sane mind would. But, maybe that's something, maybe it's not. Maybe he just has an immense amount of respect for her. But she ends up surprising him with a gift. She pulls it out and pins it on him and then names, my man, the Hand of the Queen. And I felt pretty darn happy for Tyrion at that point. I mean, he's gone through a lot of stuff, been pretty much ostracized his entire life, save his brother Jamie. Um, and, it is just a feel good moment for him. But it wasn't the most feel good moment of the show, and that one's coming up soon. And we're back at the Twins. I hope you're hungry. I felt this one coming. Logistics just cast aside. They've done that pretty much the entire season, and they've done it like, for a couple of seasons now, actually. But Arya shows up, cuts down the Frey sons, carves them up, and dishes out some Frey pies. Now, in the book, it was actually Wyman Manderley that served him up, but I have no problem with Arya assuming this role. So Frey eats his own sons and then gets sliced open ear to ear. Red Wedding has been avenged by both Jon and Arya and Sansa. Then we see Sansa talking to Jon on the armaments. They have a heart to heart. Sansa apologizes for not telling him about the Vale army. And then Jon asks if she trusts Littlefinger, and she's like, hell no. Then they talk about how important trust is with all of the enemies growing. Although, didn't they just wipe out a ton of them? I know, I know. Shut up and sip your hot cocoa because, wait for it, wait for it. Winter is here. Ned Stark, you were right all along. Then we find Sansa out in what appears to be the Godswood, and it looks like creepy Uncle Peter has stalked her out there, and he starts hitting on Sansa right next to the weirwood tree. And I'm not shocked when he said he wanted to have him and her rule side by side and take the Iron Throne together, but I was kind of leaning towards him acting as the puppet master and marrying her off to Sweet Robin, just so we can sit there and control them both. But again, no big shocker here. But Peter leans in for the kiss and is hardcore denied. Sansa walks away, and we can already see him trying to drive the wedge between her and Jon Snow. He actually started to do that when they first met in Moletown, but now he's saying, well, you have the Stark name, and he's just a motherless bastard from the South. So I'm very interested to see how Peter plays this. So far, he's been an absolute idiot as of late in the show, whereas the guy is like a mastermind genius in the book. So I'd really like to see him catch back up with his book person. Next, we travel beyond the wall, albeit very near too. We have the bastardization of Cold Hands dropping off Bran and Mira. Uncle Benjen cannot go beyond the wall because of spells that protect it, and that's very in line with the books. Cold Hands does a similar event, and he basically says the same thing. With respect to Uncle Benjen, I don't fully trust him. I'm not sure if anybody else caught the tough to read look as he had as he departed, but it almost struck me as sinister, so I'm sure we'll find out more about that in season 7. Anyways, Bran plugs into the Weirwood net, and finally, we are back at the Tower of Joy located in northern Dorne. We see Lyanna lying in a pool of blood on the bed. Ned is kneeling by her side. Now, in the books, all we got from this scene was, promise me, Ned, promise me. And in the episode, she says, if Robert finds out, he'll kill him. You know he will. You have to protect him. Promise me, Ned, promise me. And it's funny because she says him. Now, one, we don't even know that this is a baby in the books. It's just a lot of context clues that lead you to believe this. And two, there is another theory aside from R plus L equals J out there that this was actually Daenerys. So that debunks that right there. Then we see the baby open its eyes, and guess what? They are brown. Just like the guy in the next scene. R plus L equals J, confirmed. One interesting tidbit here is that during the scene at the Tower of Joy, when Lyanna is whispering to Ned, if you turn it up really loud, she starts to say his name is, and then the audio cuts out. So while I have no doubt that this is John, I'm not quite sure that John is his real name. And obviously, this is just a theory. I wouldn't be surprised either way. But perhaps the reveal is that he is Rhaegar Targaryen II. Now, you might say, why would his last name be Targaryen if they did not have a legitimized marriage? So that's a good point. There is a theory that they did legitimize that marriage on their way to the Tower of Joy. Now, that would have been polygamous, and I'm not even sure what that means in the Seven Kingdoms. However, if they did not legitimize, his last name would be Waters, which is given to the bastards of the Crown Lands. Even though he was born in Dorne, Prince Rhaegar was from the Crown Lands, or resides in the Crown Lands. So that's kind of how that would work. Each bastard is affiliated with a different name depending on the territory they were born. For example, bastards in the north are given the name Snow, just like Ramsay and Jon were. So the implications here would be that Jon has some sort of legitimate claim to the Iron Throne. Succession is pretty crazy in Westeros. We saw that with Renly and Stannis. Even though Stannis was the older heir, Renly, said, Stannis, you're an idiot, and I have rightful succession as a Baratheon. So there's a lot of bickering and fighting, but the idea is that it would give him a legitimate claim and add that additional layer of complexity when we're talking about who succeeds the Iron Throne. Regardless, it was great television. I nearly leapt from my couch and did a Tom and Swan dive off my balcony in celebration. This was 2 decades in the making. It just incredible. So glad it happened. Okay, enough of my fanboy fascination with Jon. Back to Winterfell, where there is bickering about folks fighting alongside the wildling invaders, which Tormund is quick to point out that he was invited, they are not invading. Jon reminds them of the threat beyond the wall, and by that time, Lyanna Mormont, the 10-year-old badass, had had enough of it. She calls out House Manderley, then House Glover, and then shows her loyalty by saying she knows only one king of the North, and his name is Stark, and doesn't really care that he's actually not a Stark by name. He has Stark blood. Oh, yes, he does, Lyanna Mormont. But if they only knew what we know now, that's pretty crazy. They all rally and swear fealty and start chanting, "The King of the North!" which nearly kills it for me with the Robb Stark flashback. I mean, that did not work out so well for him. And neither did the last time Jon was written in on a ballot and won an election. It will not fucking go down like this again. I swear, it will not. So we see Jaime and Bronn getting really close to King's Landing, and they notice a huge cloud of smoke, smoldering pile of ash that used to be the Sept of Baelor. So I'm pretty sure Jaime has a pretty good idea of what actually transpired there. But he walks into the Red Keep, and lo and behold, Cersei is being crowned Queen of the Seven Kingdoms. So obviously, at that point, he knows Tommen is dead, and she has found out about the wildfire and blown up the keep. And this is going to create a very interesting dynamic. We talked about Valonqar earlier, which you can click on that link again, but it's going to hold several implications for next season, and I do believe that Jaime is going to cap off that prophecy and choke the living shit out of her. So we'll see what happens. And now, finally, we arrive back in Marine where they are donning their new dragon sails. Finally, the Dothraki are crossing in their wooden horses. Finally, the dragons are returning to Westeros. Finally, Tyrion will ride on the back of a dragon. Well, one can dream. That pretty much sums up season 6 for us. I'd love to hear your thoughts on how it all shaped up. Also, if you have any requests for content, please let us know. Again, we're going to release new videos frequently over the next 9 months, so please hit the subscribe button in the bottom left-hand corner. It'll notify you once we've uploaded some content. Thanks for tuning in, and I hope to see you back soon.